Today I want to talk to you about a book which has recently been on my radar, and now that I finally read it, I would like to review it. The book's called Rumor, Fear and the Madness of the Crowds, written by J.P. Chaplin, published in 1959. The book is about different events from the past, which are all meant to be examples of something that the author calls mass hysteria. In practice, he refers to events when more than a few people did something that makes us scratch our heads now and think, wow, how the hell did this happen? It's funny slash scary to think that that might be what future generations think of us and our actions and behavior now. Here are some of the minuses I've noticed while reading this book. Language of the book can't be considered easy, therefore it will not be a success among people that get bored easily or just don't have the vocabulary to understand, to comprehend what the book says. And that can happen a lot, not necessarily because you're uneducated, but if English is not your first language, then that will be enough to cause you trouble. The historical events in this book are described in great detail to the point where I don't believe that most of the things said there can actually be confirmed with 100% certainty. Sometimes it's irrelevant details, but sometimes it's the major points that are in question. However, you should know that that is my opinion about history as a whole. I basically believe that it is all a theory and can't be confirmed, not really. Which is why I would never choose to study it, although that is just one of the reasons and not the most important one. It's a good book if you like to be surprised by the idiocy, stupidity, and weirdness of the human race. There are all sorts of chain events described. Wrong conclusions being drawn by people all the time. Word of mouth causing horrific tragedies. It shows in a really great way that being in a group and being social isn't always best. Because let's face it, most of the things described in this book probably wouldn't have happened if people just minded their own business. That's what I've noticed. But some of the stories here, for instance, there's one about total panic setting off because of a radio transmission that was just a fictional show, a play about Martians invading the Earth. And it was misunderstood, and what followed was, well, basically, you have to read for yourself to know. And I'm smiling, but it was tragic, and there was an even worse complication. Apart from the hysteria that started in New Jersey and spread across all the US apparently, the author says at the end of the chapter that a year later, the same play was broadcast in Ecuador, and a similar panic resulted. And when the South Americans realized they had been badly taken in, they got their Latin blood up and burned down the radio station, killing 6 of the show's participants. Can you believe that? That's just terrible. Alright, here's a quote straight from the book, from the last chapter that summarizes all the other chapters. The basic assumption underlying the democratic form of government is that human beings can best realize their potentialities in an atmosphere of political and religious freedom. The best government is the least government. Because Americans in general do have at least the freedom of opportunity to realize whatever talents, skills, and ambitions they may possess, our propaganda line has tended to emphasize freedom, equality, and the right to self-determination for all the peoples of the world. In effect, we are saying that the democratic way of life offers the individual the best opportunity to realize the self, since under democratic government a minimum of restrictions are imposed upon the individual. But we tend to forget that freedom, equality, and self-determination are meaningless to the man who is hungry, and whose needs for security, belongingness, and a little status are unfulfilled. Thus, a great deal of American propaganda has been beside the point. You cannot begin with the top of the hierarchy of human motives and work down. You must begin at the bottom and work up. I agree with this, and also there's something that I would add to this. I can never understand how we can just live in our countries and completely disregard what's happening elsewhere. Or how a rich person, an extremely rich person, could keep all the money for himself or herself and do nothing for good causes and things like that. Donate nowhere, do nothing. And I could also never understand how, we have all these systems, educational systems, healthcare systems. Major systems in our countries fail to deliver results, and yet we keep pretending like they're doing just fine, like everything's working fine. Maybe there's just some slight issues that need adjustment or correction, but all in all, we're good. And we just keep living this when it's not true. All in all, I think my favorite story was The Mad Gasser of Mattoon. I won't go into details, but it's just incredible. Because with the others, I could find some explanation, at least some vague detail that helped me understand where the craze might have come from. But with this story, it's almost funny reading it. It really doesn't make any sense. It's worth mentioning that for someone who has very little interest in history and does not come from the United States, most of the long descriptions of events can be tiring, unfortunately, or even very tiring, I would say. But other than that, it's a book probably worth reading. Not an easy read considering the amount of details and the fact that one sentence can take one whole page on your Kindle device. But, you know, I personally like books that bring in something new, that teach me something, that change something. From this book, I've learned about a couple of instances of mass hysteria, and I've picked a couple of sentences where I thought something smart was being said. But that would be it. The rest is just unnecessarily complicated jargon, really, that doesn't help with anything. Sorry. That would be it. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in 2 weeks. Bye.